Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we are here for a very, very special edition of the Nightly News Podcast. Today, our goal is going to be to talk to three of the incoming Nightly News Hall of Fame inductees. This is going to be something that we did on November the 9th, welcoming several of our alumni back to campus to celebrate their efforts for the Nightly News. And, of course, the first person that we're going to be talking to today is former Nightly News president Brian Christiana. Brian, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Miller. I'm very appreciative to be back, as always.
Well, certainly, I love your attitude. I love that you're appreciative, but you have to remember, we are the ones that are appreciative here. We're here to celebrate you, and I love the attitude that you have toward this, but this is for you, you know what I mean? So if anything, I want to say that I'm appreciative to you for taking time out of your schedule to be here.
Well, yeah, I'm just very thankful to be remembered still in the Central Penn community, and just have people we can all honor and celebrate together. It's always great.
So the goal for today is, and we're going to have Sherri Long and Christine Fusselman along here later on in the episode, but the goal here for today is really just kind of get a sense of, what were some of your favorite moments of the Nightly News? What are some of your fondest memories? How can you take what you learned with us and sort of apply it? But let's get started. I mean, you have had a wonderful run here over the last 18 months in terms of the organizations who you're working for. You're working with some heavy hitters in the industry. So tell us a little bit more about what you've been up to.
So, yeah, pretty much same thing after graduation, as we know. Worked here for a little while, stayed in touch with the Central Penn family. Then I went back home, started working in retail more. And then pandemic hit, so I wasn't able to gain the opportunities that I had in line. But now I'm back with the Lancaster Barnstormers, Paul, and that is by far one of the coolest things I've ever had to experience.
Well, in addition, you're underselling yourself a little bit. So first of all, yes, you interned at PCN.
Correct.
They hired you on as a part-time employee.
Yep.
And then unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they really reined in the amount of people. Yeah. So you did and were hired on at PCN.
Yeah, and then did go back. That was the thing. After the pandemic, I did end up going back a little bit. But then again, with going to retail, and then I did have to relocate. So, yeah, but still keep in touch with PCN, do some voiceover opportunities for video games that they do and all that.
That's so cool.
It is. It's great. And still with iHeartMedia as well. Can't forget them.
Yeah, I was going to point that out as well. So you're still actively involved with iHeartMedia. You've been a part of iHeartMedia for a very long time. You're also involved with high school football. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I get the chance to work, be kind of like a producer for high school football. I have to drive to Williamsport for it, though, which, I mean, it's honestly, I'm in the dab smack middle of Harrisburg and Williamsport. So, I mean, either way, I'm going to get to work in both markets. But high school football-wise, I mostly do Williamsport. So usually Friday nights, it's usually like the dynasty for Pennsylvania high school football is Southern Columbia. I mean, they're winning state titles left and right. 4 straight years they've won, and I get to produce their games usually almost every week. So it's great.
That's amazing. So what do you hope moving forward? What are some of the goals that you have in terms of, obviously you've been, I don't want to say accomplished, but you're moving toward accomplishing some of the dreams that you've had even when I spoke to you when you first got here in 2016?
2017. April. It's crazy. April 10th, 2017.
And you were able to get out of here in almost exactly 3 years, which is pretty incredible there. Yeah. But even when I talked to you, your goal was to work in broadcasting and especially with sports.
Yeah.
And so you've now gotten that opportunity. You're working in high school football. You're working for a wonderful independent minor league baseball team.
Yeah, great.
So tell us, what do you foresee the future being for you?
Well, my personal goal always was to be the PA announcer for the New York Knicks. Always a dream job. I would like to continue that path, doing PA somewhere. Lancaster, hopefully that could be the net start to getting with that. But I'm just going to keep dominating that on-field host position, Paul. I mean, I love it every time I get to put smiles on people's faces. I got a chance to put a smile on your family's face when you guys were there.
And I just want to tell you, so we did get the opportunity to go down and see the Barnstormers a night that Brian was doing the on-field hosting. And, of course, Brian was unbelievably gracious, took care of getting us tickets, which he most certainly didn't have to do. But we left that night with such an amazing experience. And obviously, you've worked with the Senators as well.
Yeah.
And, we enjoy going there. But it was such a different experience than I was really used to at any minor league stadium, and you were a big part of that, and I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, Lancaster, I've come to realize, they love their baseball. Don't get me wrong, every place that has a minor league and major league organization loves their baseball, but Lancaster, there's something special about these fans. You grow close to their season ticket holders, and, it was crazy, Paul. The day that fan appreciation, last game of the season, I'm literally driving in my car, and I have, 10 Facebook friend requests from fans, and I'm like, I thought I was no one knew who I was, but then I'm getting messages now once a week I'll usually get one just hey, how are you, we miss you, can't wait for that season. So I'm very appreciative for all that they do. I want to give general manager Mike Reynolds a big shout out. He is constantly trying to find ways to make it more family oriented, and they just it's a different experience, and for family, a big family experience.
And I just hope that things continue to work well for you. And I do have a very special announcement. Brian is going to be helping us do our basketball commentary this year for the Nightly News. Between him and Tyler Coleman, we have 8 games on the schedule between 4 men's, 4 women's, and Brian's going to be joining us here on November 20th.
Yeah.
So I'm really
excited.
looking forward to getting back in the booth. Of course, you did some baseball games with us this year as well, which is fantastic. So you've done such a wonderful job advancing our athletic broadcasting here at Central Penn.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I've never called a basketball game with you, Paul. I was always doing PA, and it's going to be something different, but I'm very excited to see how it goes.
It's going to be great, and I think what's going to be the best thing about it is it's going to be the second women's game, but it's going to be the home opener for the men, and it's going to be really fascinating, Brian, because there was no season last year, and it had been since March of 2020. We're looking at 18 months since the Central Penn Knights have had a basketball game, and you're going to be there sharing it with me. I just can't wait. I'm so excited that you're still happy to be a part of this, and I hope that we can continue to have you down whenever it's convenient for you.
Well, yeah, of course, and that's where I'm. Like you said, I'm always willing to come down. I feel like in a way I owe it back to you guys, like the club, the communication department, and just Central Penn in general, because without them, there's no me. I'm a firm believer in that, and I'm going to talk about it in my little speech I'll give later or at the ceremony. Bob Hauer, too, man. Without him, without iHeartMedia, without everyone that I go to every day, there's no me.
Well, and you've had an opportunity to really, just through your job and through some networking, to really meet and get to work with some really influential people. Obviously, you mentioned Bob Hauer, who is on multiple radio stations, works with multiple sporting organizations.
He's the Central PA Ryan Seacrest.
That's what
I always call him.
I frankly don't know how he ever gets any sleep, but I think what's interesting is his impact on you. Yeah. But you've also had the opportunity to work with a variety of other heavy hitters in the industry. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Tom Russell, another big one, meteorologist at CBS 21, great man, and forever thankful for all the opportunities he's given to me and to the Central Penn College community. Williamsport especially, we have a guy named Gary Chrisman who has been a role model for myself and Bob especially, and he just keeps his morning show and his involvement in the community is so, I admire it so much. It's crazy. Shamokin, like I said, dab smack in the middle of Williamsport and Harrisburg, and everyone's always asking me, how's Gary doing? How's Gary? How's Gary? How's Bob doing? But those type of people are amazing. And I'll even give the Barnstormer players their credit because they have given me a lot of advice and they tell me just have fun and all that. And what baseball players normally talk to people like myself or like any other person in the stands, that's what makes the Barnstormer so special is those players. So I want to give them a thanks as well.
Awesome. So now, we have just a few more minutes because, we have a little bit longer of a show today. But I want to kind of just walk you through a couple questions that I'm going to ask everyone today. I want you to think back, and we'll put you on the spot here. You have many, but if you had to pick one of your favorite memories from being a part of the Nightly News Media Club, what would it be?
I would say, again, everyone would think that the obvious answer is the Nightly News Speaker Series because that was so huge at the time. But I think was when you and I presented Connor Graham with his award. That was by far one of the coolest things that we've ever done. And it was also, if I'm correct, the first person to ever win that award.
Yeah, right. So what Brian's referring to is we have an annual club and athletics banquet. And one of the things Brian actually came up with this idea, he's like, as involved as we are with athletics, why don't we give an award? And the award can be, yes, definitely worrying about academics, 100%, definitely worrying about on the field, but also to what extent are these individuals allowing us access? Because frankly, some players are really cool with it, and some people just don't want anything to do with it, which I totally get. But I do remember that. It's interesting that you say that, because that's definitely a memorable experience. But to have that opportunity to give that award to Connor that year, it was really something special, and I think that's very interesting that you mentioned that.
Can't forget also the documentary. That was a great experience. Can't remember your film series when it was myself, you, and Curtis when we did that. But can't forget the fundraisers. Still the best sub I ever had, by the way.
Mariana's where it's at. We still do that.
Yeah, great sub. But yeah, just the fun stuff we did, delivering soup from here to Shamokin on a Friday afternoon. There's a lot I just can't forget.
So when you think back to your time with the club, who was one of the... Obviously, again, this is a very difficult thing to put into words because there were so many people who were a part of the club.
Of course.
But pick one person who you had a bond with that you'll never forget, and you'll always have a bond with that person because of the club.
Oh my goodness, man. You're putting me now that's like an on the spot, because everybody had their own little part. The one I would talk, I guess I got to go 50-50 with you and Mike. You two...
Students.
Oh, student-wise. I would definitely... Oh, man, that's tough, but I'm going to have to go with probably Tyler. Tyler and I we're still close friends. I'll give Dylan his shout-out, too, because Dylan was personally one of my closest friends. Still talk to him very often. But Tyler was a great man who, we've talked about.
He was a great man?
Well, he is a great man. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, did something happen?
Yeah, something we don't know. But Tyler, literally, like you said, he wasn't at first a communications student. He came in one of our night classes. That's when we first met Tyler. He set his goals, his dreams, and then boom, we went off with it. Tyler now is involved. He's doing basketball and baseball. I think that's a huge success story for myself, the Nightly News Media Club, and for Tyler.
I think that's really cool. And of course, both Dylan and Tyler were sort of your vice presidents while you were here, so they were sort of your right-hand people that helped you get to where you needed to be. Now, finally, this is the last question I'm going to ask you here. Now, you kind of already spoke to it, but when you think back to where you are now, what role did the Nightly News have in not only getting you through your college education, but also then preparing you for what you're now doing?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So in retail right now, the big thing that I use that I gained from Central Penn is leadership. It's simple as that. The part I really take from it is every place needs their leader somehow. It could be the smallest impact. It could be a huge impact. And whatever I try to determine day by day, do I need to make a small impact on my business or a big one? And I feel like learning from you, from Mike, even from other students, even as the president, I was learning from those students. Prime example, we have first term, second term student Jen Dulac here, and then there's me as a senior. I'm learning from her as she's learning from me. Huge example. I try to do that now with high school kids, college kids, and just try to lead them by example. And I feel I gained that from the college and from the Nightly News.
Well, I got to tell you, Brian, it's honestly been my absolute pleasure to not only get to know you and as professor student, but you, and this is something that we're right now recording this prior to the Hall of Fame induction, and this is something that I'm going to bring up, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I consider you a friend.
Of course.
And I don't mean that to sound strange. Let's just put it this way. Obviously, I am very, very adamant about keeping a professor-student relationship, being professional, and I would say that there's really only a small number of students that I really consider a friend.
Yeah.
And you are one of those people. Yes, you were my student for a long time, but since you've graduated, the way that we've been able to talk, the way we've been able to communicate, and even the way that you have shown, even though you don't live around here, that you are still interested in being a friend to me, I think says a lot about your character.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I only keep in touch with a small group of people still from the college after I left, which I get it. You move on to greener pastures. But, Paul, I'm just very appreciative for having friends like you and Lindsay. I still talk to you both very frequently, and I'm just very appreciative to keep you all in touch. And Kevin Wolverton as well. I just talked to him the other day. I'm just glad that I'm able to keep in the loop with Central Penn. I always want to make an impact on this place. And I was telling Samantha on my on our way here, I could probably only name 3 or 4 students. It was crazy.
Well, I just appreciate everything that you've done. Of course, I'm going to share a lot more about our history as well. But looking back, the thing that I remember the most about you is how adamant you were that we needed to get this sports broadcast thing off the ground.
Yeah, Ian Kemmer and myself. Yeah, that was really cool. Com 100, right down the hall. We talked about it, and we made it happen.
And that was all through a class project. But again, you guys made it happen. It wasn't anything. Yeah, I mean, I might have helped out in certain regards, but I got to tell you, when I think back about the legacy that you have here, it's the sports. And of course you did tons of other things.
Yeah.
You were involved with the research exhibition. You put on the speaker series, both of which were so important. But the athletics and the impact that you have and still have in our athletic broadcast, Brian, it's something that I can't thank you enough, and I'm so pleased and honored that you're still interested in being a part of this.
Well, yeah, of course. Any way to give back, honestly. Give it back, yep.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, that's going to do it for Brian Christiana. Hopefully this is not the last time we ever have you on the show.
I'm always down. Let's pull something off, Paul. I think we could.
Well, we will gladly have you on next time. And now that you're one of the inductees,
I know, right?
Now it's you hold a special place permanently with the Nightly News. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this part of the Nightly News podcast. We'll be right back with another one of the Nightly News Hall of Famers, Christine Fusselman. We'll be right back.
This is Norman Geary, news correspondent. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast, the voice of the Knights.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we are here with our very special Hall of Fame episode. We just heard from Brian Christiana, and we are now here with Christine Fusselman, one of our Nightly News Hall of Fame inductees. So, Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, what we're going to try to do is talk a little bit about what you're up to these days, but also kind of take a look back and reflect at your experience with the Nightly News, and I'll sort of share some of my memories as well. So let's get started. So you graduated in 2017, was it?
2016.
2016. So you finished up. So you had actually been an alumni with our travel and tourism program in the 1980s, which is something you and Sherri have in common. When you and Sherri were here together, were you in the same classes? Like, did you know her well before?
No, I didn't. I don't believe I knew her at the time.
Interesting.
No.
So, but I thought it was interesting that you both went to the same program, were both alumni, both came back to be a part of the corporate communication program, and now, full circle, you are being inducted in the Hall of Fame on the same day.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, it's really coincidental, but really cool and unique as well. So initially, why did you come back to Central Penn to be a part of our corporate communication program?
I came back after being an at-home mom with my 2 boys for, I don't know, at that time it was probably, it was close to 13 years that I was not working full-time. So unfortunately, my husband passed away, and I was looking to see what I could get into again. I just wanted to renew some skills, learn some new skills, and Central Penn had always had a big place in my heart from back in the 80s. I did not stay in the travel field all that time, obviously, but I always enjoyed the school, and I wanted to see, what new things they had and what I could learn.
So now, and I was very lucky that very early on from me being here, I was able to meet you, and I was able to have you for a couple of classes. But you were one of the founding members of the club. And when we first got it started, we kind of kicked around the idea back in like 2015. But really, it was late 2015, early 2016 that we really got this off the ground. So being a non-traditional student, why did being a part of a student news organization speak to you to the point that you wanted to get so actively involved?
I was really interested in it because of all the things that I was learning in the classes. One of the things we did even as part of our classes was to look into jobs that were out there. Where did we want to take this degree when we got out of here, and looking at what was required of people trying to get into the field, and knowing we had a lot of the background for it, there was still a lot of new modes of communicating that really weren't being practiced as part of the curriculum. So I think, with just talking to you and Professor Lear Limpy and other students, it was something that we're like, can we do this? Can we make something happen with, podcasting, for instance? We didn't get to do that right away when we started the club, but we worked toward it, and it seemed to happen, I think, fairly quickly.
And I believe this is episode 140. So,
crazy.
We've been doing podcasting for, I think, since 2016, 2017.
Right.
So, we've come a long way in terms of that. I just want to go back quickly to something that you'd mentioned, because it's something that I still do in all of my classes. And that is, so you'd mentioned about how we were looking at job descriptions as part of class to try to figure out what skills that we need to have by the time that we graduate in order to be competitive for these positions. This is something that I do in almost every single class.
Right.
Take a job description. And of course, I teach like a Com 101 class, so I have students from all different majors here on campus. But I always kind of look back, like, find a job that you want. See what they're looking for. See what skills they're looking for. In selling the club, I always say this, because we definitely, obviously, do have most of our communication students, but we also have students from all over. Parker Rose, our last president, was an accounting major, and he looks back at the ability, his writing, and how much his writing improved being a part of the club, and credits that for one of the reasons that he was able to get a full-time position when he got out of school.
That's awesome.
And so that's what I try to do, Christine, is I try to look or encourage students to look and see what skills are needed for the jobs that you want. And I think that's so cool that you did that. Now, when we first started off, we were just a small bunch of people. Do you remember all the people who kind of got this off the ground? I remember Nick Schenkel,
Candace Livingston.
Candace, yes, who I still chat with her occasionally.
Yeah,
I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. Well, you know what? I had this in my head trying to think about it before I came, and there is someone else, and for the life of me today, I cannot think of her name. She was also
Kim.
Kim, exactly. That's who I was thinking of.
So, and her name just popped into my mind because I talk to her every once in a while, too.
Yeah.
I know that when I put my documentary out last week, she sent me a message that she watched it and she really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I kind of think that was pretty much...
We had a small
very
group.
Small initial group.
We had a small group, but passionate. And all of you were passionate about different things, and that's what I found really interesting. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up that I really remembered about you, obviously, from years ago, and I don't know to what extent you're still involved with this. So even though you've gotten out of the travel tourism field, which we could probably have a whole podcast about why you decided to get out of that industry. But I look back at one of the classes that we did. You started a blog, and you wanted it to be travel-based because you enjoy traveling.
Right.
And I know that you don't necessarily still do the blog, but do you still enjoy traveling, and do you enjoy, like, looking at it and offering guidance to other people who might be wanting to do the same types of things?
Absolutely. I don't have as much opportunity right now to do that. COVID, lack of money, so forth, put a damper on a little bit of that.
COVID alone, absolutely
devastated
travel.
Yeah, I still have an interest in doing that, and I'm thinking about new ways to make that happen again or get back into it, because I miss the traveling, I miss the writing. I haven't been doing a whole lot of that lately, so I'm looking for ways to get back into it again.
I think. I just remember, like, I know that you kept it up even after you were out of my class and even after you graduated. And I was just wanted to ask you if that's something that you would consider getting back into. Because I got to say, of all the students who I've worked with over the years, you are at the top of quality of writers. I mean, you and a very small handful in terms of how beautiful and how, like, you can create a scene for people. And I remember reading some of your pieces just thinking, this is unbelievable, like, this is so wonderful. And I wanted to make sure I let you know that.
I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit more. I know you got a new job recently. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I do. I just recently moved to the Poconos over the summer, or back to the Poconos. I that was 30 some years ago when I left. But yeah, I recently moved back up there, and I'm working for a POA, which is a Property Owners Association. It's nice. It's a small office. I went from like a corporate situation in the last few years to just a small office.
Corporate isn't for everyone, including myself.
Right.
So I totally get that.
Pluses and minuses, I think, with both. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's a beautiful area. We're sitting up on top of a mountain up near Bushkill. It's something different, but I am using my communication skills there too. I mean, it comes in every field. It really does. Learning a lot of the things that we learned here are renewed learning in the media ethics and stuff like that. Just being respectful of other people and the listening skills and all that type of thing are really important. Especially in my job, you have homeowners. Some are happy with their situation, some are not so much. So, it's just taking the time to listen to what they have to say and try to get things solved for them, and then communicating in person, via email, telephone, all of that. It's all involved.
So let me ask you. So there's a couple questions that I'm going to ask everybody who's going to be on the show today. And my first question is, when you think back about not only just your experience here at the college, the most recent time, when you think about the club, what was your favorite memory?
Wow. There's a lot of good memories. I don't have like a lot of real specific memories because, like you said, I was kind of almost on the way out at the time we created the club. I think it was done within my last full on-campus term. It was exciting for me to get it started, but I think one of the things that got me while I was doing my internship was coming back to one of the meetings and just seeing how much we went from the 3 or 4 people to an entire classroom full of students that were interested in being a part of a club. That was just awesome.
When I think back about your efforts, what I always just remember is how passionate you were about getting this started. And frankly, I talk to Mike about this all the time. If it wasn't for you and Nick and Kim and some of the others who kind of helped us start this thing, this wouldn't exist, because we wouldn't have ever been able to start it without a core group of people to kind of push the needle. I mean, yeah, sure. Like, I suppose Mike and I could write stuff and I could produce podcasts and whatever, but we need the students.
Sure.
And if it wasn't for you and as the driving force initially, and some of these other people, as we think back, the legacy that you've left will transcend you. I mean, since you've left, we've won Club of the Year. Mike and I have won Club Advisor of the Year. And it's all because of the efforts of you and that small group of highly dedicated students.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying, but we look at you as, one of the people that if it wasn't for you and your efforts, that this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And, who knows where we are as professors here at this institution. So one final question for you. When you think back about the impact that the club has had, now again, to your point, maybe you weren't as actively involved with the club lengthwise, but when you look back at your experience here, what and how did the Nightly News fit into memories that you have? What impact do you think that the club has had on you professionally, personally, all of the above?
Well, I think about some of the stories I wrote. I think I got to see behind the scenes with things. I did a review on a play that was happening here at the college. That was really interesting.
And I got to point out, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. So because you got that started, we now have a dedicated person whose beat it is to cover things happening in the theater. Now, certainly the pandemic put a halt to things that we were doing here in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. And unfortunately, there's not as much of that now. But every time there was an event, some type of play or show or musical, we had someone covering it. It was all because you led the way.
That's great. But, yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that, getting to meet the cast and just seeing the process of how all of that worked, because I got to go meet with them and talk with them as it was happening, and then to see how it came together in the end by enjoying the play. Another article I had done was a gentleman that was speaking here at the college. He wrote a book called Choices. Again, lacking the name. His first name is Ron, but his last name I'm not coming up with at the moment. But later on, like I talked to him at the event where he talked to the students, and I was able to interview him then and do the story. And a couple years later, I wanted to see where he was at. I came across the book again that I had bought then. He was able to create his movie, and it became a movie.
That's so cool.
The book, and it was really neat. And I met him at the show again, and I was like,
remember me?
Well, yeah, kind of, but because I remembered him, I was able to go talk to him. He was, in the area and presented the movie, and I was like, I was proud of him, for being able to make that happen and get through that. That was an exciting thing too.
Well, and one more thing about Christine is Christine has been an active member on our communication advisory board over the past 4 years now, and I just want to tell you how much that means. I know for maybe those of you who are on the panel, it's like, we try our best to update you. You kind of tell us what you think. But I can't wait to share next year all of the different recommendations that we took away from this. I mean, we just had a meeting this week about all of the recommendations. So I just want to thank you for that as well. That not only are you such an influential piece of what we're doing with the Nightly News, you're also giving back and paying it forward to the program as a whole.
That's important. I think that's definitely something, well, again, it was something I've done in my life anyway, but I think I'm so glad that Central Penn pushes that for students too, to keep doing that. And that's, I think all of the clubs are so important for students to get involved with, whether it be the media club or any of the other clubs on campus. It's just a great way to get to know other students, practice your communication skills, whether you're in communications or not, because like we said, it goes throughout our lives and throughout whatever business we're in. It's a very important skill to have.
Absolutely. Well, Christine, it's always a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Likewise.
And I thank you so much for being here today. I know you're taking time out of your schedule to be here, but we just thank you so much and the impact that you have had on these groups of students who have had such an important, the Nightly News has been such an important piece of their life. I mean, I hope that that's something that resonates with you. It just
Absolutely.
seems like it does. So.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, for Christine Fusselman, I'm Professor Paul Miller. Stay tuned. We will be back with Sherri Smith when we return.
This is Dr. Linda Fedrizzi Williams, and you are listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Well, welcome everybody to the Nightly News Podcast. We are here on our third segment of the day, and we are here with one of our most illustrious former Nightly News Media Club members, Sherri Long. Now Sherri Smith. I wanted to make sure that I said during the presentation today that if I ever call you Sherri Long, I don't mean it to be offensive. That's who you are to me, and it's so difficult. But you were recently married, very happily. I see pictures of you guys on Facebook doing a lot of traveling and things like that. So I'm so happy for you that you found somebody to share your life with.
Thank you. And did you know that he's also an alumna of Central Penn?
I did not know that.
He's 1984 or 5
so
for
I take
accounting.
It you didn't know each other.
No, I was still in high school then.
Well, it's just so interesting that, we talked a little bit earlier about how Christine and you were in the same program. I don't know that you ever necessarily crossed paths because I believe she graduated in 87 and I think you graduated in 89, correct?
Yeah, 89 for me.
So you were in the same program and then you both came back. She beat you this time to graduation. And then she, and again, I think you may have known each other because she had just graduated when you started. But I just thought it was so interesting that you were both in the Travel Tourism Associates. You both come back for corporate communications. You both are president of the Nightly News, and you both are inducted in the Hall of Fame on the same day.
Yes, that was pretty cool. We got a picture earlier, just before we came over. Acknowledge our accomplishments together.
So, Sherri, the main reason that I wanted to have everybody on today is for number one, of course, everybody couldn't be at the presentation today. But I really just want to ask a few questions, just sort of reflecting on your time here at the college. When you think back, if you had to pick one, your favorite memory of being a part of the club, what do you think it would be?
Oh, wow. For me, well, it's kind of tough because Nasir's family was here, but I think that dedication and kind of the kicking off of our new podcast studio and just everybody being there and it was just a special occasion, and getting to meet different staff that I hadn't met before, and I just thought it was a great day to be there. And it was a lot of teamwork from our communications team and our club members.
So what you're referring to is the podcast studio dedication. So when we were our first dedicated space that we had here on campus was when we were down at the Boyer House. And we were actually down at the Boyer House until really the middle of last year. And I will never forget, Sherri, basically when we first got that space in the Boyer House had basically not been used. It was sort of, there was some historical things in there that they'd worked with
right.
East Pennsboro Historical Society. And then once Dr. Fedrizzi came here to campus, she decided that she wanted that to be her office. And we were down there with her for many years. I mean, and it was never a situation where we coordinated. I let her know when we were going to be there. But for the most part, we never really had a whole lot of interaction in terms of, obviously she was on the show and things like that. But over the pandemic, I will never forget, I got a phone call from Dr. Fedrizzi, and it was almost like she was asking my permission. Meanwhile, she's the president of the college, right? And she explained that we were kind of, now that the pandemic, we were getting ready to come back last fall, and what she wanted the board members to be down there, so they were all in one central location. But what she did do is she offered us this space, and she also offered us some assistance in trying to improve the digs in here, and extremely helpful. So on one hand, I miss the Boyer House. It was very quaint. I got to share stories with everyone who came down. On the other hand, we love it here. Much more soundproof. I was just sharing with the Harrises before we started today that there were multiple times that I had to stop the podcast because a fire truck was driving by, or the people, the landscapers were outside mowing,
or a car horn or something.
Yeah, or anything. So definitely in terms of the audio quality, this is much better. But that all being said, honestly, in my time here, Sherri, that is one of the most important days of my career. And it was just so wonderful to honor Nasir. And we did that again today. Now after the celebration, we did show Sai's documentary, which, again, just so heartfelt and touching.
Yeah, definitely.
What he did. But so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. When you were here, you got to work with a board of club officers with you, Sai, and Yuli.
Yes.
3 people who anybody who worked here at Central Penn knew all of you.
Yes.
Tell me about how that experience was for you, and maybe helped you grow professionally working with them.
I'm just thinking, I got to know Yuli first, just younger, so I felt accepted and just, being able to talk. And then I saw Sai. He came up to me at the ATEC lobby. I was using a Mac, and he came by. He's like, "Oh, that's a nice Mac," and we got in this conversation, and then I was talking about the Nightly News Club, and then he's like, "Yeah, I think I'll go check that out," and so he did. And he stayed. So it was great to have his photography experience, his video experience, and just that story-mindedness that he had. But I know whenever anything would happen on campus, we would all have the same reaction of, we got to get a picture, we got to get a story. There was a fire alarm or something went off, and we were waiting to do something, and Sai was, we were going to be recorded over here in the teleprompter thing. So Sai was done, and he was able to go over and get the story. And Yuli and I are like, well, we want to go too. But it was a great interaction, and I think all of us were jovial. We talk with people and guide people, and we just wanted to help people, and it helped us too.
One of the things that I mentioned in my sort of dedication to you was your mentorship ability. Did you ever really think about that when you were here, or is it just being yourself?
It's just being myself. That's just what I do.
And Yuli is one who kind of brought this up to me years ago, because Yuli then was still here after you left, and then rose up and kind of filled your shoes partially before Brian took over. And one of the things that I remember Yuli saying to me, which I'll never forget, was how much of an impact you had on Yuli.
Wow.
And how important you were in Yuli's progress and growth here at the school, and that was just one example. I mean, again, I'd mentioned this at the Hall of Fame luncheon, but Brian, and I'm sure Brian's going to listen to this, Brian was very green when he came here, but for good reason. He was just out of high school.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can tell you right now, those first 2 terms or so, when he was here and while he was still in meetings with you, he learned so much on in terms of the club culture from you. And again, this might not have been something that was even on your radar, but just you being yourself and being so professional and being so efficient really rubbed off on a lot of people, which is still part of our club's culture even today.
Yeah, and it was funny. I remember meeting Brian for the first time, and I was just talking to him. We were talking about the club, and I was like, after he left, I think Cy was sitting there too with me, and after Brian went away, I'm like, he's the next president. It was just one of those instant, he may have been green, but he had so much energy and focus, and he wanted to learn, and he wants to be professional. He didn't want to be like, oh, this is fun. It was like, I have a job to do. I'm going to learn while I'm here, and how can I make things better? And that was great.
One of the things I hope that we, Mike and I, both got across today is how much each of you really impacted the legacy. Because when you're talking about inducting somebody in, I've gotten a lot of questions from people just of asking me about, why we did this and what the purpose is. And it's to just recognize that we certainly, Mike and I, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Like I said, we could probably do writing and do podcasts and do sports, but the whole point is to get our students engaged, get them experience. We couldn't have done it without you and Christine and Nasir and Brian. We wouldn't be where we are today as one of the most successful, and everyone on this campus knows what the Nightly News is.
Yeah, exactly.
And considering the fact that just 2015, we had no student news organization, how far we've come over these past 6 to 7 years is just a testament to people like you, Sherri. And that's why this was so important for us to do and recognize you and your colleagues for the impact that they've made in the legacy. And most importantly, the opportunities that you've opened up for all of these other current students and recent alumni. So for that, we thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and it was nice to be, I think, a professional level because we were mature students, and that's not the right word. Well, okay, we were older. But just our level of professionalism, bringing that in, but then also being accepted from the students and also from you and Professor Lear-Limpy. Like, we were working as a team. It wasn't, here's your assignment, go do it. It was, okay, here's some stories. What are we going to do? How can we help? Researching equipment. I use my PR skills to help recruit people. It's like, yeah, let's go out there and make a poster, make it easier. Let's bump up social media, all that kind of things.
And we still use some of the marketing materials because you had made like a trifold, you had made all kinds of different marketing materials, and I actually stumbled over them recently, and we still use them. And I mean, that just goes to show that how much of an impact that you had. Even, I think you were only president for the calendar year of 2017 because, you had transferred in associates, and you pretty much were only here for like a year and a half, which is so crazy to think about.
It was intense. Yeah.
But and where I really, really want to thank you deeply is you are basically the driving force behind our publications. And as wonderful as, our online newspaper is, it's the publications that really allow us to get the word out around campus. Because yes, we have social media, and yes, we try very hard to share articles in Central Station, Student Central, but it's those publications that now have grown from just something that we wanted to do to provide people something for their portfolios. But also, we now give every faculty and staff member one of those, and every single one of them reads it. And I can't tell you how many compliments I've gotten over the years on not only the look and the layout, but the quality of the articles inside.
And it's just to see that and look back. And well, now I look back at it, and I haven't had a chance to write stories, but that was pretty good,
And you also graciously stayed on after you graduated, and certainly for you did it for free for us for a while, and then of course we did our best to pay you for your time thereafter. And coming into this year, we both kind of agreed you had moved on to a new job, and
Yeah.
you're like,
A little too much.
Can I hand this off to you? And so
Yeah.
now that's my job to do, but I take no credit because it's all your template and it's everything that you did. So, but honestly, that is something that, and this goes to every Nightly News Media Club member. I don't know how often I talk about this, and maybe I should talk about it more, but every issue I take directly to the library and they check it in under the special collections. And that means that if you come here 5 years from now or 20 years from now, those publications will all be in the library.
Oh, that's cool.
And I look forward to bringing, my grandkids here and showing them, hey, look at what Grandpa did, and I want that for my students as well. If you have ever been featured in the publication, you can always come back and see them. And of course, we still have the e-copies and things.
Yeah,
you can email
yeah.
me if you'd like those as well. Sherri, to me, it's those publications that have really increased our overall awareness and reputation around the campus, because they see that what we are doing is equally as professional as any other news organization, and I think that's so important.
Yeah,
so
it's
I
an
thank you.
actual professional publication rather than, oh, that's a cute little newsletter. It's like you read the stories and they're in depth. And what I like when I was doing it is seeing someone new come on and write a story and then watching their story increase, or better writing. It just keeps getting honed as a skill. And so I enjoyed that too.
Well, Sherri, I must tell you that it's always a pleasure to get to work with you. You have been a wonderful member of our advisory board. I want you to know how important that was. We just had a meeting the other day that we outlined recommendations from this year's advisory board that we're going to share with you at our 6-month touch base. But I just want to thank you not only for you're part of the alumni council, you're part of our advisory board. So not only when you were here did you mentor other people, and that will have a long-lasting legacy, but all these other things that we're talking about. When I said this today, I meant it. We would not be where we are without you. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, this was a rather small portion of your life. But I hope it was extremely memorable. I hope it's something you'll always cherish.
It was. And, my job now, I keep using the skills. And I think a month or two ago, I had a little Zoom chat with you about podcasting for my work. So, I use it every day. And it's great to know that I also have that resource in case I'm like, what was that he said? Kind of thing.
If you ever need anything, you know where to find me.
Sounds cool.
But Sherri, again, thank you so much for all of your efforts, for all of the things that you've done, not only just being, a wonderful alumni from Central Penn College, but also how you have stepped up, mentored other people, helped grow our club into what it is today. I mean, we're eternally grateful.
Well, that was great, and I really appreciate the sentiments and being part of the celebration today. So thank you.
It's always our pleasure. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. Today we heard from Brian, Christiana, Christine Fusselman, and Sherri Long, three of our distinguished new members of the Nightly News Hall of Fame. So, Sherri, as always, it's such a pleasure, and I hope it's not another 3 or 4 years till we have you back on the show.
I know, this was fun, so yeah.
Well, we'll have you back soon. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast for new Nightly News Hall of Famer Sherri Smith. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.